you know.
Uh,
Mm, that's fine.
yeah, I think that that alone is an indication of our condition. We can't hear our own accent, but others can. I think that that says a lot about this sense of personal identity. We can't see it because we are it, and it's imaginary. Oh my God. Um, and I know you know all this stuff. I've read your words. Um, it always amazes me that two people who have experienced this free flight or whatever it is can even talk to each other, that there's common ground. For years, I talked to someone named Wind Dancer who was turned out to be Nancy Nethercutt, who has since drifted away into her own world of writing books and but she and I resonated with everything each other said, and it was but still we managed to talk together and share probably 10 years. Um, I love talking with people like you and Miranda, Peter Rack, who else? Oh, lots of people. I enjoy talking to people in general. Um, Tell me about you. What happened to you to open the world, to let the light pour in?
Um, I don't know. It's funny, isn't it? Because when someone asks for your story, you sort of think, I've got I've got to get it right, or I've got to say
Um,
something. You sort of go into this automatic place of, oh, I've got to now convey to Michael in a way that makes sense, and
uh,
you've sort of got your own ideas about things, and is that going to make sense to somebody else? And it's funny, like what actually comes up in the moment. I've got no idea, where do I even begin with that? My brain is sort of worrying now. Do I start with school? Do I start with, what do I start with? What's relevant? I don't know. It just sort of it's just happening. It just feels like I don't know. It's funny because I think the more you talk about it and the more you kind of get into it. I was actually in the car with a friend who I talk about these things with earlier, and his daughter and her friend were sitting in the back seat, and we said to them at the end of the drive, "Oh, did that make a single word of sense to you guys?" And and they were very sweet, and they said, "Oh, it's like when you get a taxi and you see the money, right, they said, oh, it's so valuable, it's it's worth a lot to us." But you just don't, you think you're talking a load of rubbish. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't want to use that part of my brain that I've used my whole life, which is the conditioned part, because I'm very good at that. And I think particularly when I meet people and I get a bit sort of nervous and I think, oh, I've got to say the right thing. And, I love your work, Michael. I think you're fantastic. So I sort of, that's that part of me that kind of wants to get it right. But that's what I've done my whole life. And actually, I don't really have anything to say, and that's quite nice.
I think we all feel that. Before you came on, I was looking at my collars and I think, oh, they're crooked. I wonder if I can straighten them out. Hmm. Um, Tony, Tony Parkins, oh, the one who wrote The Open Secret, who is quite famous. Um, he arranges his background, he and his wife, before he starts um, a talk. I think, I think that humanness of us is the most beautiful part. Um, the part that wants to be presentable. We're tribal animals. We have to fit in. Um, I think being considerate of other people and worrying about personal appearance is all part of this persona.
Mm, mm,
I find it charming.
mm.
a human.
mm,
Um, oh, just
mm,
just raw humanness.
mm, mm,
Walt
mm,
Whitman was one of my favorite poets, and he said he loved the smell of his own armpits. And he was talking about just being human with all of its idiosyncrasies and all of its whatever comes up is easy and natural and beautiful. Uh, oh,
mm,
we keep trying to polish this sense of self. The Zen idea of polishing a brick. It can't be improved. Self-help books are, it's like weaving smoke. There's really nothing to improve. Even the desire to improve it is part of it.
mm,
And
mm.
I love being a self. I think it's the only window where love and beauty exists.
Mm, mm. It's really interesting because I think there needs to be that understanding that there's nowhere to get to. Because I sort of didn't really want to talk to you, not in the nicest possible way, because I was sort of, well, I don't want to be, I don't want to be suffering. I don't want there to be this kind of shyness, this awkwardness, this, I don't know. I think I've sort of always wanted to not be a certain way. But you've got to realize that that part of you, like you say, it's the human part. And I was saying to Leela actually that I don't think that's ever going to go away. That sort of want to please others, that want to put on, to come across in a particular way, to be able to talk articulately. And I've got this sort of weird idea that somehow I can only talk articulately, or I can only sort of be acceptable if I'm enlightened, or whatever you want to call it. It's almost like there's a place to get to that you have to get to, and until you get there, you're somehow not able to have these conversations. You're somehow not able to show up for other people, and there's so much shame in that, and there's that you're kind of restricting yourself. It's almost like you're in a holding pen. You're in a sort of stable waiting to leave because you're not ready yet to live in the world. And then I think people die and they're still in that state waiting to leave. And then you turn sort of, a certain age and it's too, I don't know, is it too late? It's probably not. But, I think it's so sad that that happens.
It is sad. Um, I'm not sure. Of course, it's difficult to speculate on things like this. I'm pretty sure that society couldn't function if everyone was privy to this perspective. Um, I wouldn't vote for someone like me because
I read half of your comment back to me. Sorry about politics. I didn't read all of it.
that
That
just
made me laugh.
yeah, I truly wouldn't. I just don't take things seriously. I don't. It bounces off. I, the tragedy of war is terrible, but it's inevitable. I mean, if you look at our history, it's a bloody history. Um, we're territorial animals by nature. Chimpanzees, a larger group of chimpanzees will build up the males, beat the bushes and beat their chest and build up their courage and run on in and try to kill as many of the neighboring tribe as they can. It's a war out there. It's survival. It goes on and has gone on and since, well, before we were humans. We wiped out the Cro-Magnon man. Um, Poor little devils. But they had to go. It was competition. The Indian tribes constantly trying to kill each other. There were, well, there's 200 Indian tribes that they know went extinct that we know absolutely nothing about. So there's probably 1,000 tribes or more trying to kill each other. It's humanity. And part of us can embrace the whole cacophony, plastic in the sea, uh, everything is natural. And part of us sees the terrible tragedy of of humanity.
Oh, gosh, you're so wonderful because you can do that in such a way which isn't resisting.
Uh,
And I just think that's so beautiful. You're just wide open to all of it. And I think most of us sort of have this kind of tightness in our chest, or this sort of, it's a contraction. When you hear about the bottles in the sea and the fighting in those tribes, it just sort of makes you want to cry a little. It's that sort of, I don't know, that sadness.
Truly, we're the very best and the very worst life has to offer. Um, I think only in imaginary separation does love and beauty exist. Um, we're so beautiful. We're so utterly, indescribably beautiful as human awareness, aware that it's aware. Only through imaginary separation. It's the gift. It's the jewel. Um,
I loved your post. Sorry, I hope I haven't interrupted you. I just wanted to say how much I loved your post about how important the imaginary separation is, because so many of us try to dissolve the imaginary separation. And it's almost like we're trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're clubbing ourselves over the head. And it's so it's so cruel, actually, I think, the way we treat ourselves sometimes.
we wouldn't treat a dog like we treat ourselves. We're brutal. Uh, criticize ourselves. We uh, constantly have a tendency to correct ourselves, be frightened of what we're going to say. Um, it's possible to spread our wings and catch the air current and drift free of the ground. I think we can soar through life. I have a picture of a bird flying out of the frame. It's just, it's a headless bird. It's flying into a vast unknown unknowableness. Free flight. You never know what's going to happen. We could have a stroke the next minute, a brain aneurysm. It could all be over. Anyone we know and love could die any minute. Uh, most people are afraid to deal with that, but it's possible.
I was going to say you're quite a confronting man to talk to. In a lovely. It's just the way you sort of say these things. We could just die at any moment. You wouldn't say that in sort of a supermarket or.
Good. I look at my grandchildren. I have four. I adore each one. Each one's my favorite. Um, and I know that at any moment, I'm old, so I have so many friends that have lost children. So I know it can happen. So when I hold them longer than most grandparents, and they hold me a long time, as if it was the last hug. And I don't know if they feel that. I don't talk to them about this at all. Only one, my grandson, was interested one time, got really involved, and then he pulled back into the world, which is good. I wouldn't want, I think you have to go to war. You have to go out there and be on the front lines for years before you had to be beaten up and brokenhearted before we start seeking.
Mm, mm.
Happen
It-
novices.
mm. I mean, it's interesting what you were saying about how you don't think this is, if everyone did this, that wouldn't be a good thing, or that wouldn't we wouldn't be able to function. Kind of, is that what you mean? You mean that we have to sort of go out and we have to sort of suffer? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, those are two different thoughts. Uh, life will beat everyone up. It's impersonal. It doesn't even know we're here. It's just this impersonal, raw evolution, struggle to survive. Um, for millions of years, through the dinosaurs, it was just raw survival, a blood fest. Then we come up after after the dinosaurs were lost due to the big meteor, supposedly. Something happened to them, and little rodents survived, and we evolved into primates, and primates evolved into humans after millions of years. We have the mouth parts, the tongue, everything, the larynx, everything to create a complex language. That won't happen again. There's nobody like us in the universe. There couldn't be. Evolution never repeats itself. We're unique. I think we're the only place where the universe gets a fleeting glimpse of its own beauty. We see the stars and wonder about them. We see rainbows and wonder about them. We give puppies to our partners and they smile. The warmth of companionship is experienced by other animals, but they don't know it.
Mm.
We know
Mm.
it.
Gosh,
Uh,
doesn't it make you feel like we've got a responsibility though? You know, and it's funny actually talking to you now. It's just so wonderful. It's almost like just it doesn't feel like there needs to be anything. But I know something that we've talked a bit about is that, you know, my work and the fact that I'm a psychotherapist and I've got to do, you know, and it's almost like there's that sort of, oh, we're responsible because we've got this ability to see these things. Do we not need to, and you know, helping with animals, for example, like we could we could help everyone and everything because we've as humans we've evolved, we've got this kind of special ability and and I know that you're kind of thinking, oh, here she goes again. You know, come back down to earth a little. I'm only one of 8 billion people. Why do I really matter? Uh, But
you're not
it's hard to
responsible.
stop that
You're not
urge.
responsible for anything, even yourself. There, people will come into my life and we talk like this, and this gentle, I call it light on light. I think we're holding up mirrors to each other where we get a fleeting glimpse of our own beauty, of our own uniqueness, how breathtakingly beautiful we are. We can't see that, of course, because, well, for many reasons, but I think we can see it in other people, in your clients. When you look at them, this caring that comes across is the most healing part. It isn't really what you say, it's that you look at them, you listen to 'em. That play where the girl, young girl, says, Papa, look at me. If you catch someone's eyes and there's magic in that, there's a door opens. I have lots of things that I use. I didn't know that I was doing this until years. This I think this perspective kind of matures like a wine or not perfume, but like a wine. It just ages. I've talked a lot about how I interface with people and I'll say whatever comes up. With an old man, I think I've talked about this a lot. If I see an old man walking by, I'll say, "How you doing?" He'll say, "I'm fine. How are you?" I say, "I'm fine. You want to wrestle?" And then he'll say, "What?" I said, "You want to wrestle, me and you?" And some guys say, "Yeah, I'll wrestle you." And then whatever
Oh,
happens,
what a gift.
it's like picking flowers. I'll say, "I'm pretty tough. I'm a lot tougher than I." You say, "I can see that. I'm tough too." So, and it goes on and on and on. And then the door opens into each other's world. I learned this in hospice work.
Mm,
Hospice work, the least you say is the better. You let them talk,
mm.
then the door opens, and then
Oh gosh,
it's all free after that. You
it's
don't,
wonderful.
yeah.
I've had a terrible habit. You ask about my life, and I didn't tell you because I've got this perpetual habit of not talking about myself because I want the other person to talk to me. So when you say, "What's your story?" I'm like, "I'm not telling you. You tell me yours." So because that's how you see the beauty in other people, is you just shut up. And I think I've been very good at just being quiet my whole life. I'm, quiet in the sense of that. Yeah, part of me has been very quiet because I just want other people to. I just want to hear you. I don't want to really talk about myself.
No,
I
yeah.
bore myself.
I went to therapists quite a few times. Panic attacks and depression and all the things that humans have, addictions. Um, the best therapist with the most impact was a crippled little lady, badly crippled in a wheelchair. And I had panic attacks before there was a name for them many years ago. And I said, I don't know what it's like. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I can't breathe and I feel like I'm a half an inch outside my body and I want to die. She said, oh, yeah, hon, those are panic attacks. She says, I have them too. I said, really? She said, yeah. She said, when I was a little girl, my mother would get drunk and throw me around the room by my hair. I said, oh my God. Her mother was an alcoholic and she couldn't find a man that would stay with her because of this little crippled girl. So she took it out on her. So over a year or so, I learned that I wasn't alone, that she opened her heart to me. And over the next year, we laughed and cried together. I think when a therapist opens up, I know that that goes counter to what they teach, but when you share your pain, when you say, yeah, I know how that feels, I feel that way too, uh, something magical happens.
I completely agree. And I think there's a lot of therapists in the industry where it almost becomes about them helping the client, and there needs to be that kind of level up. The client doesn't know as much as the therapist, and you read all these books and you do all this studying, but it's just about one human being to another in a room. It's about one person being a human, and you've got to forget all the learning. You've got to forget the training you did, because it doesn't matter. Obviously, I know about Freud and Jung, and I can reel off all the theory, but when you're in a room with somebody else, it's about the fact that you're a human, they're a human, and it is emotional. Like, because when clients tell me their story, I can feel myself getting upset by it. We're moved by each other. But
Yeah,
there's that, I think, that kind of guard, or like, oh, well, I don't have any problems, I'm the therapist. That
yeah,
is such a doing your client such a disservice, because actually the best thing you can do is to share that you've also got problems, to share that, well, I don't know if you'd call them problems, but you've also got a story. I'm not a psychotherapist because I've had a perfect life. It's quite the opposite. You only come to this because you've needed psychotherapy yourself, let's be honest. Well, I think some of us have, some of us obviously haven't. But I think the good ones have, not to be judgmental. But I'm a psychotherapist because I had a lot of therapy, and this is the school I trained at was the one my therapist trained at, and I didn't even want to do it. Like, I remember just saying to her one day, "Oh, I'm sick of selling alcohol for a living," which is what I did for 7 years in London. And I said, "I just want to do what you're doing." I'd seen her for 5, 6 years at that point, and she, we used to sit in her front room, and she was so lovely and warm, and I've just, yeah, had this kind of, she was the first person I ever met who I think I actually had that connection, genuine connection with. And I said, I just love this. All I want is to have this connection with people. And imagine doing that as a living. Imagine like doing what we're doing right now. Imagine literally talking about this and getting paid for it. What an amazing thing. So I didn't want to be a psychotherapist. I just wanted to have that connection with people. But for some reason, this is the way the world led me. And I remember saying on my first day of my training, I have absolutely no idea why I'm here. I don't, this is all this sort of stuff about Jung and Freud, and my family hated it. I was like, what's she doing? Why has she left her good job? And, the doctors of the mind, they don't like that. That's, don't devil's work, don't talk about that. So it's, yeah, it's, I don't know where I was going with that, but
I love the fact that it was in three. It was a waterfall of words coming out rehearsed, free expression. I think we can live in that. I know we can. Uh, We don't think about what we're going to say. It just it is.
Well, we need to have conclusions, don't we? We need to sort of things need to make sense. We
Yeah.
can't kind of yeah, there's this I don't know, there's but that's sort of the beauty of the connection with people. It does you just accept them for who they are. You sort of don't have these preconceived ideas about things. You don't need them to be a particular way. I think so often we want people to fit a particular structure. We want to understand where they're going with something. Like to take it back to the therapy room, you'd want to understand that that's the direction you were going in with the therapy. So if I expose something that was vulnerable about myself, that takes me into a bit of a unknown territory. And I can't rely on the theory about, oh, well, that's an Oedipus complex, and I understand that, and that's the conclusion. You don't sort of have that luxury of structure. You just dive into the unknown. And then it leaves you sometimes a bit like maybe we were right there, like, oh, bloody hell, what am I talking about? I'm talking utter nonsense. And there is
Um, the last therapist I had, a psychologist here in town, and I went to see her. What was it for the first time? Anxiety. Oh no, I had screaming tinnitus. Still have. And there's nothing, as you know, it can be done about tinnitus. And it goes 24 hours a day. And it really bothered me. Sometimes I'd just cry and my wife would hold me. And I didn't think I could live with this. And I went to a therapist and we talked about it. And somebody had paid her $100,000 to do research on everything she could find. And of course, it's all on Google anyway. Only there's really nothing that can be done about it to date. Um, and so I learned that there was nothing. So I thought, okay, I can live with this. I didn't think that. I thought, okay, let's see what happens. And I live with it. It's just the way it's screaming right now. And I think I haven't noticed it until I was talking about it. The brain is so beautifully self-healing. The body heals itself naturally and easily. We just take that for granted. And a broken mind, my mind was broken. I came a violent alcoholic household. When we fought, there was blood on the walls and ceiling. It was awful. And as an adolescent, I lived in a shadowland until I met my wife, and my life started to warm up. I had a son and family and two girls, and life became beautiful. I stopped drinking and smoking, and gradually over time, my mind healed itself. And after therapy and AA and listening to other people's stories, and there's a fourth step where they tell you everything they've done, everything they feel guilty about. And they're pretty much always the same story. There's only so many things we can do. And you just, after a while, and I did that for women too. They don't recommend that in AA because wires get crossed, but they never got crossed. I just saw women. For me, it was enlightening that women were just like us, just like men. Same desires, the same fears, the same. We're just human beings, doing the best we can.
I
And
think you're so modest, Michael, because you're. I just think it's incredible how you've managed to take what, as you were telling me about that. There's that we're so resistant to that kind of experience as humans. That fighting, that blood on the walls, that kind of experience would make 99% of people shrivel in on themselves, and you close yourself off to the world. And it's almost like, how the hell did you manage to crack yourself wide open? You did the total. It's almost against human nature. And I'm not saying that that's it's obviously a beautiful, amazing, miraculous thing. Like how you've literally managed to do something that's so unnatural. But I know does that make any sense? I wonder if sort of some people just have this brain that is hardwired to be able to see beauty in kind of what most people would run for the hills from.
I had resources. We grew up with horses, and we were not really watched at all by our parents, my brother and I. We could do anything we want, shoot any gun we wanted to. It was just a freedom of childhood. And I could ride a horse in the back country and stay overnight if I wanted, ever since I was little, or 10 or 12 or so. Um, there was consolation in that. There was a willow pond that I would ride into with my horse and sit and lay back, and there's huge willows in a little pond. And it was like almost like a womb. And I'd sit there and listen. And I go there whenever I feel pain and things like that. There were cookie ladies in my life. One of my therapists says we all need a cookie lady or two growing up. In the fourth grade, a teacher named Mr. Lowe noticed that I was bruised and would sit with me at lunch, and they weren't mandated to talk about abused children then. And so he'd just sit with me and share his lunch with me. And we'd talk. And I loved him. And two or three cookie ladies in my life carried me through. We can't make it without them. A baby dies without love, as you know, a newborn. Um,
It doesn't take much, does it, to ignite the human spirit or to keep it alive? A chap who shares his lunch with you, a willow tree, a horse.
Mm.
Was
Doesn't take much to keep the flame, the ember burning. Um, it I see every person that way as a hero. I do. I see toddlers as hero. Uh, they fall down, they get hurt, they get back up again. I talked at a Dove's house for battered women for several years, and uh, I saw them as heroes. They were trying to protect their children. Most of them would go back to their husbands, and we would cry when they did. And I see everyone as that. Every human being I see. Hospice work. I listened to stories. I had, I don't know, many clients that were World War II veterans and Vietnam veterans. And the stories they would open up to me and tell me that they never told their children, and things they did and the shame they came home with. They were just little boys when they went over there, and they came back so wounded. And you listen to their stories and you don't judge them, and you massage their feet if they'll allow it. And sometimes, almost always they do. And they'll say, "Oh God, that feels good." I see everyone. I fall in love with everyone I meet. I tell people on the net I love them because I do. I do. I fall in love with them. Then I know they're images of images. They are an image in a human brain, and my image of them is an image of an image. But I'm fine with that. Doesn't make me love my grandchildren less. Doesn't make me love people less. It makes me love them more.
I was just thinking, you have to, you have to have that love, and actually, the only thing that can overcome all that pain and all that, working in that battered woman's home and working in that hospice, the only thing that can possibly help you to deal with that is love. I know it's sad, but it's kind of a beauty, because you think, gosh, what in this world could possibly be more strong than that pain? And when you really live in that pain, you think, wow, that is. If there's something that's greater than that, then it must be pretty incredible to sort of overcome that.
I was I live in a small community in the snow country there's mountains above Los Angeles that are ski resorts, and we lived there for 20 years. And was active in the AA, but there was no adult children of alcoholics, which is another 12-step group. So I started one, and it wound up with about 100 people, which is a lot of people in a small community. And the stories I heard made mine sound like a Disney cartoon.
Mm,
Won't repeat the stories that I've heard because I wouldn't want to burden another human with with that.
gosh.
But I learned I wasn't unique, that my story was mild in comparison to a lot of others. Um, and the love grew. But it also grew for me. When we truly love, it's really just love of self. We are alone in a world of imaginary things. The brain creates a conceptual consensus overlay. And as personas, we're alone in that world. But somehow the light, it's not language. Language is our only connection. But language is somehow the carrier of the light that happens, the love that is exchanged between two people, the light on light. And we get glimpses of our own beauty through others. If you could see how beautiful you are through my eyes, you would fall to the ground weeping.
Ditto.
Truly.
Mm,
A young woman who studied hard. It's not easy to become what you've become. Papers and theses. It's not easy. Your goal was to help other people. It's like you become the beneficiary of all that study. You become the warmth itself that you always wanted to give to others. And that's your only gift is this warmth, the openness to be yourself, to let that adolescent girl come back with her pain and embrace her and tell her she's going to be okay. The child, I was molested when I was 2, and I had a dream one night after all the panic attacks and after all the therapy. I woke up in the middle of the night. No, I had a dream in the middle of the night where I was being violently molested. The whole thing, I lived through the whole thing vividly. And I woke up and it was 3 o'clock on the clock. And I thought, oh, that's why I wake up at 3 o'clock. But I evidently wasn't ready to deal with that. The healing came in its own good time. But I thought, oh, that's why. And I thought, well, I'm not going to tell anybody. People who have been molested feel the shame of it. I said, I'm not going to tell anybody. And I told my wife, and she cried. And I told my son, he was like first year of college then, and he cried.
and now you're making me cry.
You love. We bring it out into the sunlight, all of our pain, shame, and regrets. And they're not so bad. If you factor out choice, one of the things that we lose in this perspective is choice. There's no choice anywhere in the universe. If you give a dog 2 bowls of food, it appears like he's choosing one or the other. He's not. His brain is reacting to a programmed preference. And we are reacting to preferences and negative preferences. We spend our life reacting. So beautiful. We're so beautiful. Beautiful machinery. Oh,
There's no sort of blame, is there? I think we sort of want to know where this is all coming from. But I think if you realize there's no choice, then there's sort of no one to blame. We don't want to go back to these painful things because we sort of think it's going to make us really angry and, there's going to be that. But I think that, oh, I don't know, I'm not really articulating myself very well, but
mm,
there's not. I don't know. It's difficult really because it's you want to resist these things. You want to resist the difficult things. Um, because it's human nature, isn't it? We don't want to think that these things are possible and these things happen. And we want to say, oh, you had a choice, because if you say someone had a choice, then you can say, well, you can choose not to do those things. And we can choose to have a world where suffering doesn't happen. Um, but
true.
I don't know. Do you think that's a possibility? If are we going to choose bad things? Is that sort of just human nature for the rest of time? I don't know. It's a bit of a silly question. I don't think I've articulated it very well, but I'll write it down for you later, maybe.
You sweetheart. Some therapists will present that view that their clients have a choice to alter that behavior in some way. I think the therapist who truly helps is the one who sees the patient or client as conflicted, and it's all an internal struggle. It's shame and guilt and blame and all that stuff. Um, Something happens. It's magical when you start talking to someone as through that love that we have talked about, and let yourself go without being under peer pressure to follow a routine or a formula.
Well, thank you very much because you totally wiggled out of my question by not following a formula. But
You
you're
made
so funny because I mean that's what people do, isn't it? It's like you would make a fantastic politician because you sort of, but you are a good one because you actually do answer the question. You just sort of don't at the same time, because there isn't an answer. Like to my question, like why is there suffering? That was essentially what I was asking, I think, wasn't it? And will it ever end? You didn't have an answer, but you've sort of given me an answer that's made me feel like I'm not suffering and there is an end. I don't know. It feels like I have an answer, even though you haven't given me one.
Well, that's the self-cleaning part of the mind. It'll take what it's hungry for. And if it's presented through this loving lightness, um, it'll gravitate to it. It starts to
Mm, mm,
that they've been punishing themselves all these years.
mm. Yeah.
Bank
Yeah, isn't
robbers,
that weird?
yeah, weird and beautiful. Bank robbers have no choice but to rob banks, and we have no choice but to put them in places where they can't. And there wouldn't be banks without bank robbers. Reason for it. Uh,
Oh.
Asked John Dillinger, a famous American bank robber in the 30s. A reporter says, "Hey, John, why do you rob banks?" He didn't understand the question. Well, why do you rob banks? He says, "Well, that's where the money is." Uh, Seems so simple to him. That's where the money is. Oh, everything. Everything is this beautiful machinery. I love to snorkel in Hawaii. I used to go fairly often and snorkel, just spend hours out there. And it looks so peaceful and beautiful and all the fish swimming, but everything's trying to find something to eat or mate or it's a struggle. It's
Mm,
life is hard for everything,
mm,
and it's really
mm,
hard for
mm.
humans. It's
It is.
really
It is.
um, and your clients, and you're in a unique position because you people will come to you for help. Um, I think for all those years of study and all the papers, we're the ground that will draw people into your sphere of influence. And that's nice. And you can make a living doing this. And I think there is a point at which you can drop everything you've learned. It took many years in hospice for me to realize that I just was there to be with what was. And I didn't have to, it's palliative care. And you don't have to help someone. You don't have to encourage them to eat like their relatives and friends do and exercise and try to get better and all this stuff. And then they feel like failures because they don't. And you're just there, mostly to talk to them. You'll say, "What was your life like in the fourth grade? Where did you go?" Oh, one old guy named Willard said, "Oh, Mrs. Eimer, I loved her." He said she'd take the whole fourth grade class up to Hearst Castle, and every summer, and I just loved her. So I don't. It's as you encourage those people to talk about themselves and then share some of your own pain, uh, as it comes out naturally. I think you, like we said, you can't plan any of this. But the therapists that stick in my mind are the ones who did that.
They're the ones who are able to let go
Yeah.
and trust what is happening and not be afraid of the pain. So when you let go, you're letting in everything. You're letting in, the bad stuff, the bank robbers. You've got to open your heart to it, and that's something that I'm sure I've kind of struggled with. I've resisted that more kind of darker side of people. Some people seem to do it quite naturally, but I seem to find that quite difficult to my friend Sylvan, the one I was talk about sometimes, he likened it to a piano. He said, well, you don't like the low notes, Claire, you only like the nice high ones. And it's funny because I do actually play the piano, and I like sort of all the nice songs, but I can't do the dur 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 dur, the Bach or yeah, like I just ooh. But he says that actually I'm restricting myself because you need to have access to the whole keyboard. You need to have access to those low notes because actually there might be a time when somebody comes up to me with a knife and I need to be able to access that
Of
darker side or the more difficult side.
Oh, truly. And with men clients, I'm, very familiar with what how the brains get crossed, the wires get crossed.
Mm.
And there is that, and all of that training is what will come in. The machinery of is there. I think that training certainly had a purpose to create the machinery that when it's getting dangerous. I mean, I don't think most people would know that without the training you've gone through. Um, Somehow you sense where and when to go. I think it's so beautiful. I read some of your papers and I just think they're insightful and educated and beautiful. I can only imagine the hours you spent on them, writing and rewriting and
Funnily enough, not at all. I think each one took me about 15 minutes. I I just love writing. It seems to sort of flow. It's like words. I write as I talk, blah, 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 blah. So it's as quick as I talk, really. And then it comes to the end and I click submit and they seem to
oh, what
accept.
what a wonderful profession.
Mm, mm, mm,
Uh,
mm, mm.
and I'm not afraid to carry people with me. I carry their stories and they actually becomes part of who I am. Um, I don't think I get as deep as you do into the core issues. Mine is always light and funny.
Mm,
I tell the story
mm,
quite often. There was an old cowboy in an old pickup parked next to me at the grocery store, and I was waiting. And I looked at him. He was just looking down, and I tapped on his window and he rolled it down. I said, "Are you going to fight if I take that hat?" He said, "Yeah, I will." I said, "Well, I want that hat." And you step out of the pickup then. So he stepped out of the pickup. So we kind of squared off the way men do. And we started laughing. And I said, I wanted that hat because I grew up on a ranch in Wyoming and it reminded me of home. And he just melted. His softness came. He said, I run 140 head, 100 he had 140 cattle. I run 140 head on a little ranch just over that hill. He said, if you ever need a job, you come and see me. I said, oh, good. I said, I'm 81 and I still think I can climb up on a horse. Oh, yeah, try. And he lives with me. I mean, I've talked about this like probably 6 or 7 times on different groups and people. I love that. I love it. I just, they literally you will become part of who I am. I love that. I have this whole menagerie of characters in my head from childhood. They're all
mm,
images of
mm.
imaginary personas. My wife will get that phone. Um, and when I die, it's all gone. There'll be nothing left.
But you're not going to die because, you've done the same for other people. But you're part of me, and I've learned so much from you, and I'm sure other people have as well. But it's funny because when you say me, what do you really mean? Because that energy that you articulate so beautifully, for some reason, I've gravitated towards it. I just really connect with your words more than a lot of other people on Facebook. So it's that is you, isn't it? So.
It is. That's all I ever am is an image. That's all I ever will be. We babies in my family always get raspberries and then they get like this and we kiss each other and then and then we'll go like this and I can't approach my grandchildren now because they go like this. That's the reaction. And I I was talking to my son about this on the web and he says, when you die, I will kiss you into my children's nicks by blowing raspberries. And that hit with such impact. When I, when you die, I will kiss you into my baby's nicks. Uh, you're right. That's all we really are. The light in each other's life.
What more could you want to be?
What more could you want? And you can be that right now. Do you still have your parents?
Yes. Yeah.
When I talk to people, sometimes, quite often a waiter or a sandwich maker, I'll talk with them like this. We have fun, and I'll say, "Tell your parents they did a good job," and it kind
Mm,
of shocks them. They hadn't
mm,
thought of that most often. And
mm.
there's nothing more a parent would love to hear than say, "Thanks, Dad, you did a good job with me."
I mean, I heard you say that, Michael, and actually thank you because that is such a wonderful thing to hear. Because I think, you can only really say that though when you feel good in yourself. Because I think when you feel like you're struggling, it can be so easy to blame your parents, even at I'm 34 and I still have done it until quite recently. Like, oh, bloody they did that and they did that. And but I think when you feel like you're an okay person, when you feel that it doesn't matter what they did because you've managed to overcome it, you can almost say, well, you did a good job because look at me. You almost did a good job because you did a bad job because of you, I had all that therapy and then I became a psychotherapist. So thank you so much. You
Totally.
know, they
Yeah.
didn't need to know I'm being sarcastic. It's that sort of, well, I suppose I'm not being sarcastic because it is genuine. I don't know, and you never know, like maybe the universe gave me those parents because the universe wanted me to be a psychotherapist. So you've got to be grateful. Like, and it must have been really bloody hard for them because I'm sure they knew that they can't have been happy. Nobody is, a cruel person and happy, are they? They can't have been happy, and I'm sure they were terribly unhappy people. They were totally cut off from their emotions. I don't think I ever really saw them genuinely smile. It must have been a horrible thing to live with. And then to have a child like me who was constantly questioning them and asking, oh, come on, it's not that bad. I think I was quite cheerful and optimistic. And I think that was quite difficult for them because they didn't want to see that joy. They didn't want to see that. And that must have been tough. So I've got to be grateful that they chose that path in life so that I could have a better one. I could
Truly,
reverse that.
truly. When we see them through this light, forgiveness becomes moot. They didn't have a choice. They struggled. They struggled through life. Life is hard. Money is difficult to attain. All the other things that a person has to deal with, and you survived, and which means they were successful. Um, it isn't that I've forgiven my parents. I see them as a tragic. Uh, my brother and I would have been good little boys. Well, we were. We never caused any trouble. But my dad missed that entirely. He never looked at it. He never said, I love you. He never did anything except drink. But I survived. And without that, I don't, I'm pretty sure it's hard to tell, but I'm not sure I would have woken up that night in Las
Mm,
Vegas.
mm, mm,
All
mm,
soul
mm,
searching, who am I? What's going
mm,
on?
mm.
All of
It's
that.
it's so funny because it makes you very introspective when you live in that environment. You have no choice but to go inside because you shut down. You realize that, okay, well, I'm not going to get the answers in the outside world. So the only place, and I had a fantastic creative fantasy world as a child. I'd just I was my own best friend. I'd just go off into the garden and I love flowers and, you sort of, you have to you find that inner resource, that horse. You talk about your horse and your willow tree. I had my toys, the garden. I sort of you find something to connect with, and
Yeah,
it's the human spirit is so resilient. And I think the other kids who had their parents to go to and talk to about their problems, fantastic. But you'd never develop that resilience when you were forced to struggle on your own. You've got
yeah,
to be completely alone.
truly. You become a little warrior inside, a self-sufficient little warrior. And then you start to appreciate your own self. Like you said, your resilience, your strength. You have all the things that you thought you want to get rid of were there to protect you. Um, the fears, the anxieties, um, the anger, the rage. I never felt rage, but some people do. All of that is perfect survival machinery. But I know that it's possible to drop all of that armor, to let the burqa fall to the ground, uh, and stand out in the sun naked, unprotected, vulnerable. People can swing, but there's nobody there to hit. There's
I love that. I love that trust you've got.
no,
Yeah. I love that and the lightness that you talk about and the trust in life. Because you're right, you say sort of I'm all kind of caught up in the depth of things, and I think I am that sort of heaviness. But you seem to be able to just let that go. You seem to be able to sort of live in that lightness, that playfulness. It's quite amazing. You're like one of those dolls you push, and you just keep coming back up to the. You just keep on standing. You never fall. You're constantly just.
It's like a spiritual Aikido. I haven't felt any aggression in a long time. I haven't seen it. I'll see sometimes young men, especially if you can tell if they didn't have a father, because they'll walk like this. The way they walk, they're shoulder forward. They're they haven't had a father in their life. So if a young man will pass by me and give me that look, I'll go like this. I'll look me. So, and then I laugh, and it breaks. It's gone. That it's
Why do you look mean? Why do you sort of do that, first of all?
I'm an old man. I get away with it. I'm harmless. Oh, they're not going to hit me. If they ever were to try, I'd say, "Oh, don't hit me. I'll die."
Oh, I get it. So you're sort of trying to like access that aggressive
Yeah,
part of them, and then you're like, oh,
yeah.
fooled you. It's
Like,
really
you
not
want
that bad.
some of this? You want some of this? It's a guy thing.
And then you're like, here it is.
Men, men are naturally combative to each other. They give
Mhm.
each other the look, and they'll do this if it's okay. Women don't do it. They don't. This is the signal. I'm okay. You okay? I'm okay. You okay?
As in, that's the signal not to fight. That
Yeah.
I'm okay, you're
Uh,
okay.
Lizards do it as a signal to fight. You want to fight? But men will go like this, like nod. They won't go like this. They'll just a nod. I'm okay. I'm
Isn't
not gonna
that
get in
interesting?
trouble.
That
I'm not going to try to steal your woman. Uh,
was
Women
so funny.
have their own unique set of symbols. I love them. Uh, if you look at a woman, she'll signal, "I'm not interested in you," by looking down. And I think you learn this when you're young. Men will look at you like, and women,
Oh.
no, no.
Oh,
What's
but
that?
it's very sweet.
Thanks.
It's so difficult. It's hard, isn't it? Because you sort of feels like a constant rejection. But we're human mammals. I listened to your conversation with Michael Jeffries, and I think it was you were talking about inappropriate thoughts, and
Yeah.
I just think it's so funny because you've got to understand that we're actually human beings. It would be wonderful if we were all just light and we all just connected and could do whatever we wanted. But you can't, unfortunately. You can't sort of have 4 billion men as your lover. Not that 4 billion men would want to be, but
No,
say sort of lots of men wanted you as a woman. You can't do that. I mean, sorry, I'm digging a big
no
hole.
worries. No,
You
that's
know,
fine.
you,
I think sometime ago, long ago, I wrote that if chimpanzees could get a hold of chimpanzee porn, they would watch it all day long because we're sexual animals. And we cover up that. We hide it. We dirty. It's oh God, it was so the Victorians were pretty repressed and part of their life and part of their life was not. It was this has to come out some way.
well, they all had hysteria, didn't they? That was the way it came out. All the hysterics they would have, the women fainted. They used to faint a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes out. It comes
Well,
out.
they came out in the 60s, that's for sure.
Yeah. Somebody said if you remember the 60s, you weren't there.
I was just thinking all those women throwing their knickers onto the stage at the Beatles, it went like the total extreme. They were Like, oh my God, we can finally be free. And then,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God. That I think embracing maybe that first in humanity and then we start to embrace it in ourselves. I don't know. I don't know anything really,
Mm,
but
mm,
it seems that way to me that start loving others. My grandchildren love their grandmother. They absolutely adore her. And they do me too. But the 13-year-old just recently wrote, they message each other. And just out of the blue, the 13-year-old says, Nana, I just want you to know how much I love you, how important you are to me. And so, and the other kids do this too. My older one, who's 23 now, was home recently from her work, and my wife was brushing her hair as she did all the time she was growing up. And she must have said 6 times, she said, Nana, I love you. And Nana would say, I love you too, Zoe. And then she'd say it again, Nana, I love you. I love you too. So I tell my wife, I said, that's just the love that you've given her coming back. It's it's the love you shared with her since she was a newborn that's now coming back to you. I don't know if she gets that or not, but
mm,
that's it.
mm,
I
mm,
look at you smile and I think, oh, that's me smiling back.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
my
mm,
world is all me. There's nothing in there but me. Language is our connection. I've written several things about language. There's some wonderful books on language and the origin of language. And it's so beautiful, this complex language. I think we have about 1 million words in English now. Um, but it's just language. It's not, it's a symbolism. The little story I wrote about the tribe in South America that I was a missionary on, it's
mm.
just
Yeah, I love that.
the little carved figures to represent
Mm.
the world. That's what our words are. Little figures to represent our world, and we arrange them in sequence to share our life with each other. And that is so beautiful. Um, I think it's the most beautiful thing in the world, in the universe. Evolution never repeats itself. There's no reason to suspect there's anything remotely like us anywhere else. If we have people or things coming from life forms coming from other planets, they're not going to be friendly. They're not going to want to help us build pyramids. They're going to want to kill us. It's there's
Fair enough.
there's nothing benevolent in life itself. Life itself is brutal. Um, but we are the light of a very unique world. You are the light of your world. Everywhere you go, you create a world of named objects and shine light on it. I think that's where the light. One time I wrote, where does the light come in your nighttime dreams? Where does the light come from? It's all internal. I think that's a hint at the world we live in. I used to talk at a friend's philosophy class. He was a philosophy professor. And I would ask the students, it was 8 o'clock philosophy class, so half of them were, staring out the window, trying not to yawn. And I would say I would give them $1,000 if they could think of anything that didn't have a name. $1,000 got their attention. They'd be thinking and thinking and thinking. I said, you can look outside the room. Think of anything that doesn't have a name. Nobody came up with it. Nobody won $1,000 because
Love
everything
it.
has a name. Everything is a name.
Yeah. In this
Right.
life, at least, it's not. I think that's why we're all so afraid of death, isn't it? Because that's what. Sorry, it just seems like that's I think we sort of get confused because we think that the only life is what we can give words to and concepts to. We don't realize that that's just part of what is.
Mhm.
We, like you say, we're the light of, we light up our world, and we think our world is the only thing that, the only thing that's got words is the world. You can get quite confused.
Truly, it's a tiny spectrum of a tiny peak. The when they discovered King Tut's tomb, he looked through a tiny crack, and his companion said, "What do you see?" He said, "I see many wonderful things." I think that's our condition. We look out through a tiny spectrum of the world and we see colors and hummingbirds and rainbows and trees and the ocean and clouds, and we see many wonderful things. We see things. Um, we're the only animal that does that. We don't know what an animal sees, but it's certainly not a named place. They can learn a few words. I don't know if you're familiar with Coco, the signing gorilla. The lady supposedly taught Coco 1,000 signs for words, and Coco could talk to her in small sentences. And wrote something. She has since died, but she was with this lady a long time, 20 or 25 years or so, maybe longer. And I said, when Coco finally gets enough words to develop the sense of self, we're going to have to figure out a way to tell her that it's not real. Um,
Gosh,
which is
yeah,
what we're trying to do with science. We're trying to figure out if the sense of self is real or not using the science that created.
isn't that fantastic?
Yeah,
It sort of seems like a bit of a waste of time, but it sort of just come.
it'll drive you crazy. It'll drive you to the edge.
But it's quite fun, isn't it? I think this is why conversations like the one we're having right now, we're doing our own little bit
Yeah,
to sort of complete that loop and
yeah.
make it make sense.
This is fun. This is the dance. This is two imaginary people coming together through a shared language and dancing in their own light. Um, I find it exquisite, powerful, sensuous. Um, to me, it's the only thing that makes sense.
Mm,
And that
yeah.
doesn't, uh, nothing makes sense.
But I think what I'm feeling talking to you is that profound sense of peace. And there's no word for life after death. There's no word for what is beyond words. But the word that I think comes closest to it for me is peace. And there's that kind of stillness. There's that sort of, sometimes when we talk, there's this kind of moment of just, oh my gosh, what a relief. I can't even put it into words. And I imagine that we don't know what is out there. We don't know what's beyond words, but I imagine that that comes close to it, that feeling of nothingness but peace.
For us, there's nothing beyond words. We can't see it unless it has a name. We're totally unaware of it unless it has a name. Um,
No. We want to name it to make it feel not so scary or like it's a good thing. Tell me my cat loves me. I need to know my cat's in heaven.
what's that? What's that? What's that? Um, and we pack our children. Horsey. What sound does a horsey make? Wee! We fill them up soon. It takes a tribe to create a self. Our teachers will pack our little brains full, and that's good. I mean, we're part of a tribe. That's survival. That's beautiful.
Mm. We need
Beautiful.
it, don't we?
Very few of us are wired to say, what's wrong with this? And begin to wonder, who am I? What's really going on? What's real? What's reality?
And do you think that's hardwired into your brain? Just curious, or is it to do with your upbringing?
I think some way my wife many years ago, I started this when I was 10 years old, the first time I remember what's going
Mm.
on. Uh, not too, maybe we've been married 25 or 30 years. And I said, do you ever wonder what's going on? Like who we are? What's really happening? She thought for a while and she said, no. I thought, huh. I found that interesting that everybody wasn't like me. One little girl just recently was somewhere and she could sing very well. And she just thought everybody could sing. I thought everyone was like this, wondered who they were and what's going on, but that's not true. A rare, rare, very
Mm,
sad.
mhm. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, I'm with you. I thought everyone did this. But it's so lovely to talk to people who genuinely do, because I've just been a sort of square peg in a round hole my whole life, because I've been operating under the assumption that everyone did, and people have been very nice to me and very kind of, oh, that's very nice, Claire. But obviously they think, what the hell is she on about? They're just too polite to tell me to my face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, um, we can laugh about our life, the whole thing, the good parts, the bloody parts, the happy parts, the sad parts, the shadowland, and that opens our heart to everyone. I truly believe as you, well, I don't know. I was going to say, as this lightness that you are floods into a client, but I don't know anything about that world other than being on the other side of it. So I don't know. I just don't.
I think it's sort of being, sorry, I've interrupted you again.
Oh, that's
It, it sort of feels like friendship. I was talking to Leela, whose video you shared actually. Um, and there's something about having a friendship with somebody that almost makes them part of you. Like you said, you bring someone into yourself. And I often say to my clients, it's a process of trust. Over time, you're going to trust me. Over time, you're going to see yourself the way I see you. Over time, you're going to realize there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. It's going to take a bit of time because you've got to let me into you. You've got to sort of open yourself up to me. And as I said to Leela, I can't believe we're friends. There'd have been months or years ago, and I'd have been so intimidated by her. The courage she has, that sort of openness, that purity. I see her as just this beautiful, pure soul, and I used to see myself as totally unworthy. I wasn't anything like that. I was anxious, I was shy, all these things, and I was. You just think, oh, I can't be like that. So maybe that's what you're talking about,
mm.
friendship.
Yes, that we're somebody where we can be ourselves with. Nothing to hide, nowhere to hide it. Um, it's exquisite. I think girls, I know girls can be really mean to each other when they're adolescents and even later in life. And if you're pretty, you can become a brunt of attack from other females because you're a threat. Um, Pretty girls have it hard in life. My wife was a cheerleader and beautiful. She still is, but
Mm.
she was a radiant child. And when they were really good friends till they turned about 14. And then the girls turned on her and she was an outcast. And she's wounded still. She won't talk about it. She doesn't want to. And she doesn't, I don't think she sees. She took it personally, as teenagers would, but she was pretty. And it's no benefit when you're a teenager, as you probably know. Um, and guys fight. They'll, you know, get in fist fights. I love. Oh, it is running. We're running. That's okay. Um, but it's hard being a teenage girl. I think it's harder than boys. And some people are wounded through their whole life because of that. But
I found it so difficult. Sorry, I've interrupted you again, have I?
no, no, it's fine.
I found it very difficult being a teenage girl because people everyone puts so much emphasis on an identity, and I never, I think I've told you, I never really had an identity. I sort of just floated through life, really not really knowing who I was. I remember being about 9, I was a similar age to you, and writing down all the things I thought I was, and it just didn't stick. I was like,
Mm.
I need an identity. Everyone has an identity, who am I? And I've tried to write it down, and I tried to create one, and it just wouldn't stick. But it's like everyone sort of categorizes you. I don't know if you had it at your school, but you've got sort of the groups, the cliques. It's like Mean Girls, all the gangs you've got, and it's like everyone has to fit into one of those bloody things. And I just didn't. I was just friends with everyone pretty much. But that's not okay. People don't. You're weird because people are like, oh, well, who is she? I can't categorize her. I don't know who she is. So I think that's very threatening to people, and they
Really?
kind of project their fear onto you,
Of course.
possibly.
Of course. Yeah. All of that becomes a burden that most people carry through their whole life. Rejection and fear and anxiety. Um, Few of us get to wade through the swamp because it's too painful not to. A few of us merge into the light and spend the rest of our life in awe, uh, the joy and awe of simply being, amazed that anything exists at all, constantly amazed. Um, God, this has been fun. We have, we're going on. It's
Yeah, bedtime for me.
right. That's right. It's much later.
Oh.
The sun's down. Claire, this has been a joy. Um,
Mm.
let's talk again sometime.
I'd love to. I keep sort of, there's so many things you've said that I want to sort of comment on or talk about, and
Oh, I
I'll
do.
get more fluent, Michael. You're the first person I've talked to on Zoom like this, so I'm a bit kind of nervous, but it's nice to sort of have the fluidity, or the it will come, and it is what it is, right? You can't judge it. It's been lovely.
Even saying it is what it is trying to pin it down, trying to put a name. You know,
Yeah, you're right.
people doing this a long time say this is it, and I'll think, hey, what does that mean?
I just want an answer for everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I it's possible to free fly. Falling, it feels like falling at first, falling into the vast unknown unknowables. We've always been doing that, but you can become aware that ultimately you know nothing, that nobody knows more than you about anything. There's no authorities on this. There's it's everybody's guessing, and some guesses are better than others, but that's about it.
Well, I think yours are really, really fantastic. I'm not flattering you. I don't meet many people who um who don't sort of, because I think I said to you in a recent comment, you're one of the few people who don't kind of identify with my projection onto you. You haven't
Oh,
sort of taken the bait, you haven't taken the ego bait, which is, yeah, I'm a guru, and sort of telling me all these things that I don't really need to know. But I think a lot of people feel quite flattered when you ask some questions, and they sort of want to give you answers, and you don't do that. You keep
yeah.
pushing it back.
On the non-duality group, I became a group expert, and then I said, I'm a group expert. And so, and then that became group expert plus one. And I said, I'm a now group expert plus one. And
What do you mean by plus one?
behind my name it says group expert on non-duality. I don't know if you're a member of not of
No,
non-duality.
I left.
Are you? So
I need to go back in.
somebody thought I was really serious about taking that personally, and I didn't care. I'm trying to get to group expert two, and I don't know why.
I really that stresses me out. Gregory asked me to be an admin in that group a few weeks or months ago, and I was like, you don't want to do that because people are going to think I know what the hell I'm talking about. But it was actually so kind and lovely of him, because
Ah,
I love that group and I just like people. I'm a bit like you, I think. I just all I was doing was liking everyone's posts and
yeah.
commenting on parts and oh, you're so wonderful, want more, and I think he quite liked that I was doing that and being friendly. And that's why he asked me. He didn't ask me because he thought I had some sort of divine knowledge. Obviously I don't.
Ah, ah, ah.
I'm worried that people think I do. So
Eh,
it's that sort of, yeah, that kind of group expert. You don't really want the badge, do you?
oh, so wonderful. Oh, this has been grand.
Yeah.
All right, I will post this. And it's I don't think we'll wind up in jail.
Well, let's hope not. Hey, it's been so refreshing, and I've really appreciated it. And thank you for everything, because you honestly have helped a lot, and I think you've helped me because you haven't tried to help me. So that's the best kind of help.
You
Thank
as
you.
any help. Yeah. Sometimes I ask people that I've asked my grandchildren is just once or twice that I say, well, what would I change about you if I could? And almost always people will think and think and think. And they'll say, what? I said, I wouldn't change anything about you. I just see you as just fine the way you are. And I do. I don't care what you've done or what's been done to you. I don't care. You are human. You are you are the best life has to offer. Uh, ah,
Hmm.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
huh?
you. Hmm. Well,
Bye-bye.
bye. Bye.